be encouraged about the future and be built up about it and to be stronger in our faith and to be stronger in our relationship with you. And that's what we ask for tonight. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So, as advertised, tonight we're going to be talking about the woman and the child and the dragon, and actually the first beast and the second beast too. But I didn't know that when I made the title slide, and I didn't go back and change it because I liked it. I didn't want to put anything else on it. And when you go searching for like the beast on Google, I always try to find, when you're finding images for this stuff, you just Google it or whatever. It's always some weird like medieval painting or stained glass or something like that. So there's never anything that makes any kind of sense, but I guess that makes sense. But I thought this was a nice creepy picture, so I went with it. Pretty awesome. All right, so we're going to get into it. First off, previously. So, dear, if you'd put up my slide for that. She looks really busy. Can you? I don't think she heard me. She's got technical problems back there. It's okay. All right, so first off, okay, so John, I hate to be like overly repetitive, but I spend all week in this, so to me everything seems kind of repetitive. So if I'm repeating myself too much, just deal with it, I guess. But so John is on the Isle of Patmos, right? And he's been banished there because of sharing the word. And while he's there, and keep in mind, he's probably close to a 90-year-old man at this point, God blesses him with this vision of the end of time, so far as we can tell, is what it is. The revelation of when Jesus will return. And so John is caught up to heaven in this vision, and he sees Jesus standing before him, and he comes out, and he's got a sword coming out of his mouth, and he's surrounded by these lampstands, and he says, these lampstands represent 7 churches that I want to receive this message. And so he gives them the 7 churches and a message to each of those independent churches, and this message would have, once written, gone out and basically made a circuit from Patmos. Once it hit shore, it would have made this loop around those churches, getting the word out exactly how it was meant to get out. And then we start getting into kind of some of the more apocalyptic future kind of stuff. And this angel comes and he's got this scroll, and he says, we got to open the scroll, but who's worthy to open it? And John's like, oh man, there's nobody worthy to open the scroll. And he starts to cry over it because he's upset about the fact that nobody's worthy. And it's like, oh, here's the lamb. And we see Jesus as this slain lamb, a literal lamb with its throat slit. And it says, this is the one who's worthy to open the scroll. And so there's this rolled up piece of parchment, and it's got 7 like wax seals on it. And as each one of the seals is broken, something is unleashed. And I hate to say like sent on earth, because for the most part it's kind of held back. It's opened up and it's prepped and ready, but it hasn't actually gone out to earth yet. And so that first seal breaks, and that's what we call, the first 4 seals we call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which sounds really awesome. The first one breaks, and it's this rider on a white horse, and the message there is there will be captivity, there will be conquering and people being imprisoned and things like that. There's the second seal is broken, and it says that it was a red rider on a red horse, and he's given this great sword, and it's war that's going to be unleashed on earth. And then there's a black horse that's talking about how much bread is going to cost. It's just going to be insanely expensive. And so when that seal is broken, there's famine on earth. And then the fourth horseman is death. It says he's a pale horse, and the word for that is the same word that we use for like chlorophyll in plants. So it's kind of like this pale, sickly, green-looking horse. And it says that 1/4 of people will die as a result of this particular horseman. So here we see it's 1/4. And then later, when we get into the trumpet judgments, everything is 1/3, and then it'll just kind of keep going up from there. So God's wrath, he's as crazy as it sounds and as intense as it sounds, it's limited in its scope. It could be worse. It's an accelerating scale to give people time to continue to repent if they decide to do so, which of course most don't. Then the 5th seal breaks open, and the martyrs cry out, people who've died as a result of their faith, saying, God, when are you going to bring justice? And he says, chill out, I'm going to do it. Just hold tight a little longer. And then the 6th seal breaks, and there's an earthquake and stars fall and all that kind of stuff. And then the 144,000 are sealed. God says he's going to seal up his people, 144,000, which for all intents and purposes seems to be Jewish people. Probably the Jews who are left on earth will at this point have realized, when they start to see some of these signs and wonders start to happen, they'll realize, oh man, we were wrong all this time. Jesus really was the Messiah, and they will throw their allegiance in behind him. And then when the seventh seal breaks, that is the ushering in of the seven trumpet judgments. It says there's a period of silence in heaven, and then there's some more earthquakes and some more stars falling and the moon blocking out and stuff like that. And then the trumpet judgments begin. So we went through these last time. So there was fiery hail that fell, destroying a third of the plant life and all the grass. Then something like a burning mountain, probably like an asteroid or something, crashing into the sea, destroying a third of the sea life and a third of the ships on the sea, and the water becomes blood. That was a California joke there, in case you didn't hear that. Then a star called Wormwood falls and destroys 1/3 of the fresh water in the springs of water. Then the sun, moon, and stars are darkened for a third of their time. So a third of the day is darkened, basically. And there goes Southern California again, because they won't have any energy from their solar panels. And then this eagle goes out, and whether that's actually an eagle or an angel, what that's supposed to mean, we don't know exactly. But something is out there flying around saying, whoa, it's going to get worse. This is where it really gets bad. And then from then on, everything impacts people on their person. It's one thing to have, as I said with the Exodus plagues, it's one thing to have frogs everywhere. It's another thing to be covered in boils all over your skin, and so this is it's about to get real. And then the locusts come out of the pit. Something falls, whether it's a heavenly being or a heavenly body is kind of hard to say, but it hits the ground and the ground bursts open and these locusts come out, and they're not like locusts we've ever seen before. They have tails that they sting with. It's like the sting of a scorpion, and they're kind of creepy looking. And they attack people and they torment them for a period of 5 months. And then the 4 horsemen are released with the 6th trumpet, and that's when, all of those things would kind of come out and actually be out there on earth, tromping around, doing their famine and war and death and all that stuff. Then we get into the next part of the vision. So there's going to be 7 bowl judgments, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, or 7 vials, depending on the translation that you read. Those get real bad. But before that happens, there's this kind of interlude period where we're given more visions. And this is really where we start to get into the future. What is it going to look like from our perspective on earth? What will we see going on? Because we're not going to see the seals being broken. We're not going to see horsemen. But there's not literally going to be a green horse marching around fogging the place or something like that. Those are signs, and those are heavenly things. What we're going to see is what we're talking about tonight. What signs that we're near the end are we going to see? And so that's where we're going into. So we're going to be in Revelation chapter 12. And a lot of tonight is simply just going through the scripture kind of verse by verse, not every verse, but good chunks of it, because it really explains itself pretty well. We can just kind of go through it and pause here and there and talk about what we're reading, and that works real well for tonight. So Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. Let my wife get on her space bar there. Yes. And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems, which are like crowns. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, but her child was caught up to God and to his throne. Okay, so what we want to talk about is, what does that mean? What is all that about? There's a woman and a child and a dragon, and she's pregnant, and the dragon wants to eat her baby. It's like a weird, like, crazy person's offshoot of like Shrek or something. I don't know what's going on here. So let's identify the people. So that's what we want to do. We want to identify these figures. So if you could put up my identifying the figures slide, darling. So who's the woman? That's the first question that we need to answer. And actually the Bible, it tells us who she is if we know what we're looking for. And so it says that she's got the sun and the moon. So she's clothed with the sun and the moon is at her feet, and she's wearing a crown of 12 stars. And at first glance, you might be like, I don't know what that's about. Okay, so think about this. God is trying to give John a message that's, believe it or not, relatively clear, but it's visual. It's a visual message. He's not telling him, please turn to page, 17 of your Bible. He's not doing that. He's giving him a visual that John would see and be like, I know what that is. Now, for us to read it, it's like, what is there? Is it matter that the moon is at her feet? Like, okay, so she's standing on, so that's like below her. No, it's not that complicated. The fact that the sun and the moon and 12 stars are in it is enough to tell us what he's talking about. So this is going out on a limb, and I don't expect you to come up with the answer, but I will ask, can you remember a point in the Bible where there is in one little section of verses, this is not broken up over a chapter, this is like one thing, I don't know how many verses it is, I should have looked up that fact, but a point where there is a mention of the sun and the moon and 12 stars in one place. Does that pop into your brain? Joseph's dream. Yeah, exactly. So Joseph has this dream, and he says, man, guys, which bad call. The younger brother's like, guys, I had this dream, and the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to me. And they're like, oh, great. The kid has visions of grandeur. That's wonderful. He's already daddy's favorite. So he is the 12th star. So he mentions 11 stars, but he is the 12th star. The sun and the moon, in the case of the vision, is his parents. His parents and his brothers are bowing down to him. Well, yeah, because one day he will be in charge in Egypt, and he's going to feed them, and they are literally going to bow down to him because he'll be in that position of authority. So when John sees this, we don't have to why is she clothed with the sun? Why is the moon at her feet? We don't need to get lost on all the details. It got John's attention to say, oh, that's Joseph's dream. Who is Joseph protecting? Israel. It's God's people. Who is the woman? The woman is Israel. The woman is God's people. So who is the child? Well, he's a male child who would rule the nations and then was caught up to God and his throne. I think you can probably do this one, huh? Right? Yeah, that's Jesus. So we know who the woman is. We know who the child is. The dragon is not tricky at all. In fact, it actually tells us exactly who the dragon is. If you look on down, I think my next... verse 9. The dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of, could it be any more obvious what I'm talking about? The dragon, the serpent, in Genesis. No? The devil? Satan? Lucifer? Any other names that I can think of? It's just really clear. Okay, so the dragon is that. And that makes sense. The dragon wants to devour the child, So we think about, when Jesus was born, Herod found out that he had been born and sought to have all the children destroyed. Now, this isn't literally a dragon eating a baby, but Herod was motivated by the devil. He's motivated by evil to try to destroy Christ because he didn't want to give up his own kingdom. And so when we say the child is going to be devoured by the dragon, that's what we're talking about. And it says the woman is given the great wings like an eagle, and she's able to flee away, and that she's got a safe place to be for a while. That whole thing about wings of an eagle, God actually told the Israelites, remember that time when you guys were slaves in Egypt and then I delivered you? He says, I delivered you on the wings of an eagle out of there. Now again, not literally. If you've read Exodus, if you're doing your Read Scripture app, you've finished Exodus and you're most of the way through Leviticus now. There was no eagle, right? But it's just saying, like, I came in and I rescued you in an impossible way, and I swept you out of there in a hurry. And so the woman, goes away where she's safe, which actually, ironically, she goes to Egypt. That's where Mary and Joseph went, was Egypt, while they're waiting for Herod to die so they can bring Jesus back in. Okay, so excuses. That's what. All right. I think I'm back. Hold on. All right. Now we're back. I gave myself more gain so I can hold it further away. Okay. So, yes. Awesome. Sorry, live stream audience, for that a little bit, but it's been a day of replacing batteries in microphones, and now I'm completely lost as to where I was, but that's okay. So the great dragon, we identified the people. That was the point I was trying to make. We've identified everybody in the story. We know who the woman is. We know who the child is. We know who the dragon is. So we can move on. And it talks about war in heaven and the dragon being cast down and all that kind of stuff. It also tells us this about the dragon. If we back up to verse 3. Jenny, can you click on verse 3 of Revelation? Go 12:3. It says, another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon. Okay, so the devil. He has 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. So we know that we're being asked to understand something else here. This is not mysterious. This is not meant to be like, oh, what could that be? And I'm going to go out and try to find patterns of 10 and 7. It's not that complicated. Again, for John and for somebody who's really, up to date on their Old Testament scriptures, this immediately calls something to mind because this is Daniel's vision. This is the vision that Daniel sees in Daniel chapter 7. So we're going to go to Daniel chapter 7 and just look at it. It says, Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, behold, the 4 winds of heaven. There's that reference again, right? The 4 winds of heaven keep popping up. So this has something to do with some great judgment thing that God's going to do. The 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. Now, before we move into Daniel's vision in any more detail, I want to say something about this great sea. So the sea gets referenced multiple times. Often, when the sea is being referenced, it's talking about people, humanity. It's like a sea of people. And so the sea is depicted a couple of different ways. When we're in heaven and we're in the throne room and John sees the sea at the throne of God, it is calm and it is like crystal. That sea is at peace. This sea is not at peace. It is being stirred up by the winds. It is tumultuous and chaotic. We're meant to think of the chaos sea as being, motivated by disorder, chaos. The world was chaos before God brought order to it. It said that there was these chaos waters and God spoke to the water, and that's how he created life. And so the fact that this sea is being stirred up by the winds and it's chaotic and tumultuous tells us these are not godly people. They don't have the peace of God in them. And so these beasts come up out of the sea, literally kingdoms and individuals who are not godly people coming up out of, the mass that is humanity. Okay, so going back to this concept of Daniel and the dragon, bring up that next slide, darling. There's going to be 4 beasts in the vision, and I'm not going to read all that because I'm reading enough scripture tonight, so I just kind of cap that off for you and tell you. He sees 4 different beasts. The first one is a lion that has wings like an eagle, but then the wings get plucked off, and he stands and thinks as a man. Then there's a bear. And the bear, it's raised up on one side, it says. So he's higher on one side than he is on the other. And he's got 3 ribs in his mouth. And then there is a leopard beast that has, and each one of these says it's like a lion, it's like a bear, it's like a leopard. So it's not like literally. A leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads. And then another beast that comes along he can't even describe it because it's not like any animal he's ever seen before. It's not like anything. It's a beast. And then if you go through all the interpretations of these are different phases that are going to come on the earth. And so there's the first beast, the lion, is Babylon, and that is King Nebuchadnezzar. And if you remember, there's a point in Nebuchadnezzar's life where he goes nuts, and God has brought judgment on him because he won't behave. And so he confounds his mind, and Nebuchadnezzar is out crawling around in the grass and eating grass like an animal. And then one day his senses return to him. And so that's probably what's meant by this. His wings got plucked off, and then he stood as a man. It's like he was this great king, and then God humbled him, plucked his wings off of him, and then he got his mind right, and he got straightened back out. The bear is the Medo-Persian Empire, which would come next, and it's out of balance because the Persian side of the Medo-Persian Empire was stronger than the other, and the 3 ribs refer to 3 nations that they conquered to become the empire that they were. And then the leopard refers to the kingdom that would come of Alexander the Great. It's got 4 wings because it's really swift. And Alexander the Great, man, he conquered in a hurry. He didn't live that long. So he really got his job done fast. It's got 4 heads because when Alexander the Great died, his kingdom was split into 4 pieces, and it went to 4 different generals. And some of this is actually revealed in greater detail later on in the book of Daniel. So there's actually some more details there. If you haven't read Daniel in a while, I recommend it. Grab one that's got a good Bible commentary with it, because it can be kind of hard to process all of it. But Daniel's got some really cool stuff in it. So those are the beasts. Then this other beast comes up, and he's unlike any of the others. And so we want to read about him. Actually, I think I'm going to read the description next of what Daniel says about it, because he's curious to know what's going on with this particular beast. So Daniel chapter 7, verse 16 is where we want to pick up. This is when the vision is all over, and he's like, I do not understand what's going on, because this beast comes up, and he's got horns, and one of his horns is a little one, and it pops up, and it breaks some of the other horns. So let's just read what the Bible has to say about it. Daniel chapter 7, verse 16 says, I approached one who stood there, so this is a heavenly being, and asked him the truth concerning all of this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the things. These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. And I desired to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the rest. He was exceedingly terrifying, with teeth of iron and claws of bronze, and devoured and broke into pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. About the 10 horns on its head, and then the other horn that came up, and then 3 of them fell. The horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke great things and seemed greater than its companions. And I looked, the horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. I'm not done with that yet. I'm going to finish up reading that. But while we're on that note, so Daniel has a vision of this 4th beast. It has 10 horns. Okay, well, the dragon had 10 horns, right? And this one little horn rises up, and it breaks off 3 of the other horns, or uproots them, depending on the reading. And that little horn has eyes, and it has a mouth, and it speaks blasphemous things. And so it's like this horn is different. in the Bible, anytime when you see these visions and you see something about a horn, it's always talking about someone who has authority, someone in a leadership role. So these are kings, these are kingdoms. At the time of Daniel, when he sees a beast with 10 horns, this is a prophecy about Rome, and that Rome would eventually conquer Greece, and that Rome would be in power. But this whole vision complex is being copy and pasted now at the end of time, and we get to see it play out again. It's like history repeating itself and in a new way. And so this one little horn that's going to rise up, it's got this blasphemous mouth, and it usurps the power of the other horns. That's the Antichrist. And that's what the message that God is trying to tell us by giving us this vision is, remember back when Daniel had this vision, and I told him exactly what was going to happen. I said there's going to be a king, and then he's going to fall, and this other empire is going to come, and then another empire is going to come. I'm telling you the same thing. I'm giving you a roadmap to the future. I'm telling you that there are going to be kingdoms and nations that are going to rise, and this is what you need to look out for. Just like Daniel had the ability now to look out for these kingdoms that would come in human history, we have the ability. We don't know exactly what each of those 10 horns is going to be. Could it be that there's 10 nations that come together in some sort of like a UN type arrangement, or like a European Union type arrangement? Something that's very possible. It could be. Could it be 10 different world powers over a period of time? It could be. The point is, that little horn, at some point, we're probably not going to know when the 10-nation confederation is happening. We might, but we very well may not. But when that little horn comes up and it expresses power over the other ones, when somebody rises up and all these different nations show that they're willing to give allegiance to this one individual, and he's a mouthy little dude who says blasphemous things, well, we know who that is. It's no surprise to us who it is, because God laid the roadmap out for us just as clearly as he did for Daniel, and that's what we're meant to get out of this vision. It's not some sort of cryptic thing where you got to get out a codex and flip dials and unlock things and look up the 7th Greek letter in every paragraph. It's not some omega code kind of thing. It's very clearly laid out. This is what I gave Daniel. Remember, I'm giving you the same thing. I'm giving you a roadmap to the future and what you need to be looking out for. So let's finish before we do that. The little horn who's got the blasphemous little mouth on him, it says he's prevailing over the saints. So he will rise to power, and God's people will suffer at his hand. Jews, Christians, whoever's left on earth that follows God is going to suffer at the hand of the Antichrist, and it's going to seem like God has forsaken us. But we got to know, we've read the book. This is what's supposed to happen. And it says he will prove after night of this Ancient of Days character has come up before. This Ancient of Days who has white hair and a white robe and a gold sash is Jesus. He's the Jesus we saw on the Mount of Transfiguration. He's the Jesus that the disciples saw when he rose from the dead and was in his true heavenly body form, his eternal body form. And this Ancient of Days is going to conquer that blasphemous little horn. He's going to take care of it. And judgment will be given for the saints of the Most High, which means the martyrs that were under the throne of God who were crying out for justice will have their moment. It's going to happen. And the time comes when the saints will possess the kingdom. So we're at verse 23 of Daniel chapter 7 now. Thus he said, as for the fourth beast, again, just laying this out very clearly, there will be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth, and trample it down, and break it into pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will rise, and another shall arise after them. He'll be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law, and they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time, which keeps coming up, this time, times, and half a time. Before we move on to verse 26, park it on verse 25 for just a second. This blasphemous horn is going to speak words against the Most High, so he's going to denounce God surprise, surprise, the Antichrist having bad things to say about God. He's going to wear out the saints. Again, surprise, surprise, he's going to be hard on God's people. He shall think to change the times and the law. Now that's interesting. Now in Daniel's day, and we're prophesying about a Roman Empire, there's a guy that comes along, Antiochus will do this. And he actually persecutes the saints horribly, and he does do some things about changing some of the feast days and messing with the calendar. But in the end of time, I can see a future where somebody comes along and says, look at the calendar. Everything is based around this Jesus character. And yeah, we had the year, we used to call it to BCE and CE, before the Common Era and the Common Era. But let's face it, the year 0 is still 0 because of Jesus. Somebody's probably going to come along and say, all of these laws that we have, the reason why we have them is because of this Christian junk we can't get rid of. Why don't we just break that yoke of bondage and get rid of it, and we can free up all these concepts? People can be free to do all of these things, and let's go ahead and let's change the calendar. Let's make it reflect what we want it to reflect. Now that's conjecture, but it seems to be what the Bible is indicating. If you see somebody rising to power and making a claim like that we need to change the calendar to reflect man's values and not God's values, well, that'll be a good sign of what kind of time we're in. Yeah, the mentality is already here. Yeah, we couldn't, at no time in human history have we been as close as we are in some aspects of this now. I agree, absolutely. And this times, and half a time keeps coming up because the Bible's painting a clear picture that the Antichrist, there's going to be a 7-year period, because God loves the seventh, whether it's literally 7 years or just a complete period of time, we don't know. For half of that, the prophets, the 2 witnesses that we talked about before, whether that's literally Elijah and Moses or Elijah and Enoch or who it could be, or if it's just God's people, if it's just the church, there's going to be half of that period of time when the church is just preaching hard and really getting out there into the hedges and highways and trying to find people. And then there's going to be a great persecution, and those witnesses will be slain. And then for the next half of that period of time, that 7 years or that complete period, the Antichrist is going to have all the authority, and he's going to start changing everything. And the Jews will not be able to go and do their sacrifices at the temple's probably going to be rebuilt, or something new is going to be done with the temple area in Jerusalem that exists now. The Muslims have control of it right now, but probably something will happen to allow all the religious faiths to, all paths lead to God or something like that in this area. But he's going to suspend any kind of traditional worship practices that we would think would honor God, and he's going to replace them with something else during this time and times and half a time, the 3.5 years or the half of the complete period. It's going to be a time when people are convinced that this is the true God. But we're smart enough to know that that's not the case, because this is not of God. Verse 26, the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Amen. Now, in Daniel's day, he's prophesying about the end of a period of time, and the Roman rule will crumble because Jesus is going to show up on the scene. During the Roman rule, Jesus will come out of that, and he will rule all nations, and he will establish peace forever. But it's not coming together the way that Jews and even the people who would eventually become Christians would think, because Jesus dies. And we've got this long period of time now where it doesn't really seem like God is on the throne, maybe. Day to the future and predicting Jesus is coming, it every bit as much applies to his second coming that is going to come. And then all of these things that are kind of like metaphors, it'll be an everlasting kingdom, and dominions will serve and obey him. And that's true right now. Jesus' kingdom is here. It's very much alive. We're a part of it. And everybody knows about it. And a lot of people are choosing to put their allegiance with it. But there's going to be a day where every word of this is very literal. And that's the day that we're looking forward to. Okay, so we get it now. The Revelation message is supposed to make us think of Joseph's kingdoms will come, an antichrist will rise, 3 of the kings will be uprooted by him, whether he has people killed or 3 countries come together under, some sort of an empire or something like that, and he'll speak blasphemous things and kind of stuff. Okay, so back to Revelation chapter 12. Verse 15. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman to sweep her away with a flood. So we've got this, we understand there's these 3 characters, the woman, the child, the dragon. It says the dragon wants to devour. Talk about this kind of in waves over different nights. But I think what the Bible paints a pretty clear picture of is that there will be some of this that I think, and this is my opinion, so take it for what you will. From what I've read, I think that there will be a portion of this that we're going to be around for. So I think, again, this is just my very literal take on the Bible. So far, it's not given me a really good, clear idea that Jesus has taken us up yet. So I really think when it applies to like the first 7 seals, even the first 7 trumpets, I think Christian people are likely to be around for that. Now, a lot of people will disagree with that. A lot of people think that the rapture comes absolutely very first. I'm with you. What we know is this: God's got us. Now, whether he chooses to shelter us from it, and when the disasters hit, they just don't affect us. I mean, you got to think about like the plagues of Egypt. The lesser plagues often did have some kind of an impact on the Israelites. Like it was occurring and it was going on out there, but it didn't directly impact them. They were in it, but it wasn't, there was darkness that could be felt, but not in their house. You know what I'm saying? It was right outside the door, but it wasn't in their house. And there's been plenty of times when God has brought judgment on people, and he doesn't take his people out of that. He allows us to go through it. Now, is there a point at which Jesus will come and take us? I think there is, but I think that's before the bowl judgments when things get really, really bad. And I think that what we just read here kind of indicates that, because it talks about the dragon's going to get mad, and he is really going to tear up on God's people, and he's going to make war on the rest of her offspring. And I think that may very well reference one. I saw a beast rising out of the sea. So now we've got a new vision. The woman and the dragon vision, that's over, and he's seeing something else now. I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns. What do you know about that? And 7 heads and 10 diadems or crowns on its horns, and blasphemous names written on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet, I lost my place. Its feet were like a bear's, its mouth like a lion's, and to the dragon, and to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and his great authority. One of his heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. They worshipped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" The beast was given a mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months, which would be equivalent to 3.5 years, which is the same thing as saying a time and times and half a time. Just another way of saying the same thing. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven, and it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given to it over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it. everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. So again, in case it wasn't absolutely clear, we get this. We've already got the dragon. We've seen the 10 horns on the dragon, and we're supposed to get in mind, oh, this is what Daniel's talking about. And so when the first beast rises up out of the sea, it is literally a cut and paste job of Daniel's vision. Daniel saw a lion and a bear and a leopard and then a beast he couldn't identify with a blasphemous little horn on it. And now we look at this first beast that rises up out of the sea. It's a leopard with bare feet and a lion's mouth with a blasphemous little horn on it. Well, what do you know? It couldn't be any more clear what God's trying to paint. The picture he's trying to paint for us is, please read Daniel chapter 7, right? And we've done that. And so we understand this is a message about the future. Look for the little horn. Be watching for the little horn. Something else we know about the little horn that we're now learning from the book of Revelation, not only will he speak blasphemies and want to change the calendar, he's also going to be wounded mortally, but then be healed. And the book of Revelation goes back and talks about this several times. It seems as though he either actually dies, or it seems like he's just on death's door. And the second beast, which we're about to read about, it's kind of like the first beast is the Antichrist. The second beast is his prophet, kind of. His hype man, his yes man. I like hype man. I think that's a good way to put it. I think if we say prophet or priest or something, that probably doesn't appeal to the people who will be appealed to follow the Antichrist, but his hype man, I think, works pretty well. And so his hype man is actually going to heal his wound. And that's going to convince a lot of people that this Antichrist is who he claims to be, that he is, in fact, God. But we'll look into that a little bit more. Moving on, Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. So I'm just skipping ahead just a little bit. We're going to look at the second beast here. I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns, like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence. It makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. Got to look at 18 is where I want to go to. It was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast so that the image might speak and cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. And it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead. Before we get into the number of the beast, because that's its own little thing that we need to talk about here, I want to make the point that there will be, along with this character who rises to power, he's going to get mortally wounded. I don't know if that's an assassination attempt on him or how that works out. But he's going to seem like he's dead or he's literally going to die. And then the second beast, this hype man, this prophet, is going to say, oh, we need to worship this person. This individual is God, and I'm going to prove it to you. And he's going to raise him from the dead. And then he's going to do other signs and wonders and miracles and call fire down out of heaven. Now, it's interesting that when the witnesses of God brought fire, nobody was impressed. And they applauded when the witnesses died because they didn't want to hear what the witnesses had to say. What the witnesses had to say was, you better listen to God and you better take God's righteousness on you and you need to follow God's law. And the people didn't want to hear that. But when this guy comes along and pulls fire down from heaven, he's also tickling their ears with everything they want to hear. That everything you want to do is fine and right. And if you want to go out and live this sinful life, then that's totally cool because this God says that you can. And let's make an image to this God and worship him. You're not going to fall for that, are you? You would not fall for that because God said, don't make an image of me. I mean, That's right at the top of the commandment list. Don't make an image of me. That's clue enough. This is not God. Christian people who've read the book of Revelation are not going to be fooled by this Antichrist. And his signs and wonders are not going to impress us, because we're going to look at the book and we're going to say, the Bible says that he's going to do signs and wonders, but everything else about this guy tells me I'm not going to take the mark. Verse 17, if you've got the mark, no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, what is that all about? It's not a barcode or a social security number or anything like that. I actually think the whole thing about this, why is it on the forehead and the hand, first off? Like, are we going to be asked to get a microchip or a tattoo or something? I don't think so. I don't think you need to worry about any of that. Here's what we need to be concerned about. When there's another place in the Bible where it talks about your forehead and your hand. And that was when God gave the Israelites the law. He said, mark it on your hand, put it as a frontlet between your eyes. Don't ever forget. I want my law to be so natural to you that it is everything you do and everything you think. Literally, put my law in your hand. Carry your Bible around with you. Literally, if you need to, hang my law on a box in between your eyes and beast. When we say we take the mark of the beast and it's on our hand and it's on our head, instead of doing the things God wants us to do and thinking on the things God wants us to think on, we're going to be inspired to do things that are not godly and to think about things that are not godly. And it might not even need to be a literal physical mark to do that. Taking the mark of the beast is giving allegiance to this Antichrist. It's being willing to submit to his authority. And this number 666, I don't know, I wonder if this wasn't like a little bit of a coded message that anybody who John is writing to will probably be able to decipher. Because he goes to the trouble to say, if you've got wisdom, if you've got understanding, you can calculate the number of the beast. And you may have heard this before if you've looked into Revelation. Hebrew, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet are also numbers. So whereas we have, our letter characters and then we have numeral characters, the Greek name of the guy that was in power for the Romans, that was such a problem for the Christians, which was Nero, and you take Nero Caesar and write it out in Greek and convert it into Hebrew, it literally is 666. And also the name the beast, just to say beast. If you take beast and take the Greek word and convert it into Hebrew, it literally, the numbers add up to 666. So I think John is trying to say, in our day, in our time, the Roman Empire is a bad thing, and you do not want to give your allegiance to Rome. You want to give your allegiance to God. And if you want to look at who is the archetype of the guy you don't want to be and you don't want to follow, don't put your allegiance behind Nero Caesar. Don't put your allegiance behind the Roman Empire. Put your allegiance to God. You don't want to follow the beast. You don't want to follow Caesar, because that's a path that's leading you to ruin. And in our day, there will be someone else in this coming future, this Antichrist character. And that 666 doesn't need to be a literal number. It doesn't need to be some sort of omega code. It's just a guy who's in authority and is asking you to do things that compromise your faith. I want you to abandon the law of God, and I want you to take up this other law, and I want you to make this image of me, and I want you to worship it. You're not going to fall for that, are you? So you don't have to worry about this. People are always concerned, like, man, I hope I don't get the number of the beast. You're not going to fall down. You're going to, whatever it is, you're going to know what it is. Now, might that come with some sort of, like a microchip or something? It might, But it's not getting a microchip under your skin is not accepting the mark of the beast. Giving your allegiance to something other than God is taking the mark of the beast. And if they say to you, hey, when you come by and give your allegiance to the Antichrist and agree to worship him, you'll know. It's not going to be sneaky. They're not going to sneak it up on you. You will have to willingly give your allegiance to Antichrist, and you're not going to do that because you know who God is, and you know that that's a mistake to make. Babe, would you put up that slide 7 for me? Okay, so the first beast is the Antichrist, and we're supposed to think of Daniel's first vision when we see that because of the 10 horns and all that good stuff. The 4 beasts. He is actually in line with Daniel's second vision, and I'm not reading that to you because I knew we wouldn't have time to do it. But if you want, when you go home tonight, crack open the book of Daniel, go to Daniel chapter 8, and there's a beast, a ram with 2 horns, and that is a reference to this prophet. He's going to call for worship people to give their allegiance to the beast by taking this mark of the beast. But again, please do not worry over the mark of the beast because it's not going to sneak up on you. Okay, give me my next slide, darling. So why does God want us to read Daniel so much? Like, he's going to a lot of trouble to give this vision. Well, it's because we're supposed to know, and this is all stuff I've told you already, but I'm just putting it up on the screen to make it really clear. Nation will rise against nation. That's going to happen. God knows all and sell. He knew that was going to happen. There will be peace in here. There will be darkness and plague and disaster out there, but there will be peace in here. And even if this body gets broken, the peace in it is not going anywhere. And if I get killed as a result of my faith, I know where I'm going, so take me if you want me. But I will not bow my knee to some Antichrist figure. And if you really want to get literal about it, think about what happened to Daniel and his buddies, because they were in the same situation. Bow to the image of God. And they said, that is not God, and I will not bow to it. I will not eat your food. I will not stop my prayer. I will not stop following my God. And you know what? It worked out for them just great. They got thrown in a furnace, and they didn't get burned. They got thrown in a lion's den. They didn't get eaten. But their enemies did. God's got it. And he's giving us a very clear message about that. Remember what happened with Daniel? I got this. God's not going to forget his people. Now, in the end, the temple will probably be rebuilt in the end of time. Can't say for sure that it was. But in Daniel's day, it was, right? In the end, nations rose against nations, and there were wars, and people got thrown into captivity, and bad things happened, but ultimately the temple got rebuilt. And Jesus was born, and he walked on earth, and he went to that temple and said, oh, they're going to tear this temple down, but it'll rise again. This temple will rise. These temples will rise. And all of this stuff, this whole Revelation mystery, and what does it all mean, and what are all these symbols? And I go to Daniel, and that doesn't help a whole lot because his stuff's just as wacky as John's stuff. Man, Jesus put it simple. Jesus laid it right out. As I'm reading through all this Daniel stuff and all this Revelation stuff, I'm like, boy, that reminds me of something that Jesus had to say. So we've got the Revelation layer. And if you lay the Daniel layer over top of the Revelation layer, it lines up perfectly. It's the same vision. Lion, leopard, bear. Thank you. You can sense my hesitation. Lion, leopard, bear, 10 horns, little blasphemous horn, then another beast with 2 horns. And what's all this stuff about? Okay, but it's all lining up. And usurping all of that is the words of Jesus. Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. And I want you to listen to this. I don't think that you've read this part of the Bible before. I don't think it will ever be any more clear to you what Jesus meant than it is right now. Because we've read Revelation and we've read Daniel. And for me, this really clicked. And I think it's going to click for you. You're going to hear of wars and rumor of wars. See that you're not alarmed. This must take place. And it's not the end. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. We read about that. That's trumpets and seals. All of these are just the beginning of the birth pains because the bowls haven't even happened yet. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake, which bad news does not sound like early rapture to me. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. We've seen that. The Antichrist and his hype man are going to do that. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. There's the encouragement. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole of the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, which is when the Antichrist rises to power and has his 3.5 years when he just wrecks everything and takes everything God has built and seems to have completely destroyed it. And he's done away with God's law, and he's done away with temple worship. Spoken of by Daniel, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. At that point, I think there will still be Jews left. If at that point, if somewhere in between what Jesus just said and what he's about to say, there is some kind of a rapture for the Christian people, I think those Jews who receive that seal are still there. And he's saying, hey, if you're in Judea, flee to the mountains. Verse 17, let the one who's on the housetop not go down to take what's in his house. Let the one who's in the field not turn back to take his cloak. Alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath. For then, I had to switch slides here. There will be great, I got to find my spot. Oh man, I'm just going to look at the slides here. There will be great tribulation such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now. No, and never will be. That's when the bowl judgments come, which we haven't gotten to yet, but it's going to get worse. And if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, there he is, don't believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders. They're going to call fire out of heaven. They're going to even raise the Antichrist from the dead so as to lead astray, if possible, even the very elect. See, I've told you beforehand. As the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. Where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in the heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call. They will gather his elect from the four winds, there that is again, and from one end of heaven to the other. Doesn't that sound good? Jesus got this whole thing in hand. When you go back and read that, having read all that other stuff and knowing, Jesus just laid it out so plain. There will be wars and rumors of wars. There will be horns and little horns. And yeah, the moon's going to get dark and the sun's going to get dark and stars are going to, that's all part of the deal. I know that's going to happen. But it's okay, because I've got this in hand. They're going to say, look, there's the Christ. And some people will be deceived. Don't be deceived. And they're going to say, there he is over there. Don't go there. Don't go there. You flee to the mountain. You get out of there. Wherever they say go, you go the other direction, because you don't want to be where the fire's going to fall, because that is not the Christ. When they do signs and miracles and wonders and they point to this individual and they say, there's the Christ, you say, no. I'm going to get as far away from that as I possibly can, because I know my God's eye, this whole thing's going to be over. And there's not going to be time for giving your allegiance to anything. Your allegiance already has to be given. When Jesus shows up, by the time you see him, it's already too late, because he has come with the sword of his mouth to perform final justice for God's people. And in that moment, we will know that we've done the right thing. We haven't compromised our faith. And there's one last thought that I want to leave you with before we're done here. I didn't do too bad. I'm only 5 minutes over. Will you put up that last slide? Side note, going back to the very first stuff that we talked about, going back to the dragon. Verse 9. They, whomever, you, we, have conquered him, the dragon. How do we conquer the dragon? The dragon sounds awful powerful, and the dragon's going to do bad things. And right now, the devil is like a ravenous wolf going around just seeking who he can devour, trying to cut people out of the herd and tear them down. How do we defeat this guy in the moment right now while we wait for Jesus to come back? They have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb. It's nothing you can do. It's something that Jesus has already done, and we just proclaim that victory. And by the word of our testimony, and by not loving our lives, even to the death. We want to conquer the devil. We want to see people set free. We want to see people not suffer the fate that Revelation tells us is coming for a lot of the world. All we have to do is overcome evil with the love that Jesus has already shown us. He doesn't need us to cut ourselves and put blood on an altar, right? Somebody that I'd taught before had posted, and it was basically saying, you know, it's pretty awful that we teach our children, because I was brought up like this. I'm not talking from I was, but we tell our children, oh yeah, it's not, God does punish wickedness, because if he didn't, this is what you get. When wickedness goes unpunished, every bad thing in the world that you detest, everything that tears people down, everything that makes people miserable is a result of us choosing wickedness. This is what wickedness gets you. God has to punish that. He has to do away with wickedness, or we're never going to have anything better than what we've got right now, the miserable state that we're in. When God made the world, there was no wickedness, there was no sin, there was no death, there was no evil. We brought it in. And he immediately fixed it. And all he's asking you to do is let him fix it for you. And that's a message people need to hear. Because this Revelation stuff can get scary. But it shouldn't be scary for us. Because God's got this whole thing in hand. He knows exactly what's going to happen. He knows every king that's going to rise. And he's got a plan for all of us, and it's going to work out great. And we're going to be redeemed as a result of it, and we'll be with him when the saints overcome the armies of the serpent.